thank you for being here. Somebody just walked in and said, "Oh, nice group," and I thought, yeah, everyone here is nice. I know almost everyone here. Just a note, we are live streaming and recording, so you can turn around and wave, and the people who might be at home or tuning in later if they happen to be outdoors at the Israel Festival or over at the event at MCC that's happening all day today, and a few other things that are happening out in the world today. But it took us a couple of tries to get Dr. Isaac Namdar here, and we're so glad to have you here, to welcome you. David Silverstein has been very willing to join us today and accommodating our couple of calendar changes. So I know that many of you have been looking forward to hearing Dr. Namdar for a while now, and the reason that his talk was postponed from an earlier time was the sadness in his family, the death of his father, that kept him away from these travels. But we're glad to have you here and welcome you. I know that a lot of us had the opportunity to meet Dr. Namdar on Friday night when he and his partner Andrew, where's Andrew? Oh, there you are, joined us for Shabbat dinner and for services. So some of us have had the opportunity to get acquainted. But I think you all already know why we're here, and now some of you even have the book in hand that tells Dr. Namdar's story. So I think we're going to have Dr. Namdar tell us what he wants to tell us, and David will jump in at the appropriate times, and there'll be opportunities also for us to ask questions when we hear more of that story. So I think I'll just go ahead and turn over things to Dr. Namdar now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction. First of all, thank you everybody here for coming on a lovely day like this, being all cooped up inside and listening to me. I know it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much, Rabbi, for inviting us both today and also to your congregation. It was a lovely services on Friday night. My blessing to you is that after you moved into this lovely space, may you outgrow it very soon. May you have a new search committee for a new space, because the members are bustling out the doors. Thanks also for the president, Bruce. Where did you go? Oh, here he is. Thanks for having us, and everybody else on the staff who did this. Hannah, you were there from day one organizing this. Thank you very much to you as well. I definitely want to thank Dr. Silverstein, my co-panelist. I was just telling you in person, but I'll tell everybody else too. When the movie came out, Trembling Before God, about 10 years ago, I was completely closeted. I had two distinct worlds. I had my religious family world, and I had my free world that I was exploring. And then I guess your movie and everybody else in it was really my first source of being introduced that you could possibly combine the two, and the two do not have to be exclusive of each other. And there's other people like me out there, and I knew there was hope for me, and there's other people I can bond with. And thank you very much for having the courage to being in front of the screen, millions of people, knowing all the talks you did, giving a lot of us courage to be where we are right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So my story is about my background in growing up in a Sephardic community, Sephardic Jewish community. Usually Sephardic means Jews originating from Eastern countries, and that includes anywhere within North Africa, Middle East, and further into Asia. Our customs are a little bit different than the customs of Ashkenazi Jews. Our heritage is a little bit different. Some of the practices that we do in religion are a little bit different. Most certainly, some of the societal regulations that we abide by are a little bit different, and I think that's part of the conflict that arose in my situation. I would like to introduce you to some of those things. Sephardic communities are very community-based, community and ancestry. Not necessarily a community like this one, where we have many different people from many different origins coming together, calling this their home, bonding together, and making a family together. Our community is based on your ancestry. It's a linear ancestry of everybody who originated from that particular town, in that particular country, in that particular region, and you just continue that line, and people immigrate together, people live together, people live in a vicinity of each other, and that community, no matter where you go and what you do, just translates with you as part of the identity forever and ever and ever. We do have very tight community regulations, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. For example, we have a community calendar where if you think you're going to throw a simcha, you have to run it by the community calendar first to make sure that data is available. You're not going to be in conflict with somebody else. We have regulations of what is appropriate gifts to give at a wedding. This is the minimum, this is the maximum. We have regulations of what is appropriate behavior for your teenagers and what hours is recommended for them to come home. And it's very tight-knit community in that sense. People live within decent geographic location of each other so they can be near each other and they can be near the synagogue. But even if you happen to be not living in an immediate geographic location, for example, I'm from New York and I live in Manhattan, and we have this one central synagogue of my individual community, which happens to be in the suburbs in Great Neck. It's understood that I'm not going to go to services in my nearby synagogue that happens to be of like-minded people to me, but I'm going to get in my car on Saturday morning and drive all the way to the suburb and go to that one synagogue where everybody else is. It's a given. So you maintain those ties. And that's why it's very important to be part of the community and your standing within the community and your behavior in it. The events that happened to me during the book happened to be very near and dear to me. And when they did happen, I thought it was appropriate to put it in a book format and discuss it with other people. My individual background is I was born overseas. My entire family left together with the rest of the community, and we settled in New York area. I probably knew somewhere during late high school, beginning of college, that I'm gay. There's no other gay people in my community. There's not one single person who's out, who we know about, who lives the lifestyle, who could be a role model or who could be an example for the things that I would be going through. There's always rumors, such and such, blah, 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 but there's no individuals that you can identify and say this is an accepted level of behavior or lifestyle. It's always shunned upon to be as such. The idea was, if you happen to be gay, you live your life as a closet person within the community. If you think you can bring yourself to marry somebody opposite sex and have family and raise children, that's optimal. If you think that you cannot bring yourself to that level and you just want to live quietly, celibate, and maybe do things on your own privately, people are going to talk behind your back, but nobody's going to say anything in your face. That's really the accepted norm of what is expected of you living in that framework. I wasn't really happy with that myself. I thought I do deserve better than that. I do deserve to be loved, and I do deserve to be loving somebody who can return the love to me. So being that I was more of a medical professional and I had a chance to live outside the boundaries of the community a little bit, I explored. And about 9 years ago is when I met Andrew, the love of my life. And it was very clear to begin with that this is it. This is my partner in life, and this is the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with. So I did take steps slowly to change my life and build a life together with Andrew. And as such, I tried to minimize some of my daily contacts with my community of origin. Not to be as involved, not to go every single occasion, but just to go pay my respects to family, go for holidays, maintain some contacts. And I thought I had reached somewhere of a happy medium of having some level of privacy and having some level of sense of family and love, while also maintaining my respect and some ties for the important people in the community without being involved with them all the time. I thought, to me, that was a good harmony. Apparently it wasn't. But we'll get into that later on, and that's really the story of what happened here. So later on, Andrew and I, we got married in the state of Connecticut, where it's legal. And We had the wedding civil ceremony in Connecticut, and then we had a party later on in New York. At the party, we invited our friends. Everybody from Andrew's side of the family obviously was invited. Most people from my side of the family were not invited. They didn't know about it. There were a few people there, but not as many. Like any other normal couple, you want to be happy with your wedding, and you want to share it with your friends and family of the people who care about you. We had a website that we used to communicate with our guests about invitations and registry and pictures and such. And then after the wedding, I put some pictures up on the website so that people who had come to the wedding can refer back to the website and see their picture, if they want to download it, if they want to order some of those pictures. And that was it. 2 months later, we didn't think about it. It was done, and we moved on. I didn't really think it needed to be, since it wasn't a website on Facebook where people are seeing it, but it was a private website on ewedding.com, I didn't think it needed to be password protected or hidden. If you didn't know it existed, there was no way for you to get there. And then something happened. Somebody found the website. And they didn't know what to do with the website. And they decided they're going to share it with others. And others shared it with others. And others shared it with others. And that's how the whole thing happened. So on a Saturday back in January of 2010, I happened to be downtown, and I had some errands to run. And I sat down at Aroma, which is the Israeli coffee shop downtown, to have a little cup of coffee and something for lunch. And just when I sat down, I checked my email to see what's going on in the world. I got this email from my nephew in Israel, not even in New York, this is in Israel. Hey, listen, call me. Don't go to synagogue. Everybody knows and talking about it. Call my mom. OMG. That one sentence from my nephew forever changed everything else in my life. It was a doomsday scenario I was not ready for. It was like somebody dumped a truckload of ice water on my head. It was as though my heart just plummeted to the floor. It was as though there was no oxygen in the air. It was as though there was a ton of bricks on my chest and I was suffocating. You name the cliche, I felt it. I was just numb. What does this mean? What happened? Who knows? How did I find out? What are they saying? I'm ruined. In the past few months, ever since I went to Israel for my brother-in-law's funeral, select members of the family had slowly discovered the news about my wedding. The ones who came forward to congratulate me were all supportive. Could this new discovery be an extension of the same? Did somebody cross the line of decency and decide to divulge the information to strangers? Was there a violation of trust, some kind of betrayal, or some kind of backstabbing? I figured I owed myself the next 15 minutes of peace to finish my lunch before calling Israel to talk to my sister. Not that it wasn't enjoyable, but I just needed to breathe before digging in. Last bite, and it was time to call. I called my sister and just listened. Somebody had received a phone call from a relative in the United States telling her that someone got into our website, saw all the pictures, and sent an email to his friends telling them about our gay wedding. People also got into the Facebook account of Andrew and myself and saw the video of our wedding ceremony. Apparently everyone, all 500 community members found out in a matter of hours. She wanted to make sure I had not gone to the synagogue that Saturday so not to run into any awkward situations or confrontations. Especially since our synagogue is a major source of gossip, a topic like this would be too juicy not to discuss on the spot. I told her I hadn't planned on going to the synagogue, and I just stopped going regularly for a while now. After that, I picked up my tiny iPhone screen and somehow tapped into the wedding website to see what happened. In the 6 months that the wedding website was up, we had about 600 hits. There was a counter, I could go through it. In the past 24 hours, there was 1,000 more hits to the website. People getting in, people digging in, and seeing all kinds of stuff that it was none of our business to begin with. It was a big moment in my life to realize that the thing that I was trying to keep separate, it just blended on top of each other, and it's not going to go well. I didn't know what to do. I left it to be for people to take their action first. I was numb. I was really not in a framework of taking any proactive action. The first thing I did was to deactivate the website. I didn't need anybody else to dig into it for something they didn't need to know. I did get a couple phone calls and some emails from family members. The ones who did approach me were actually supportive, and this is an example of somebody who was supportive. Dear Isaac, I hope you're fine. Despite what has transpired in the past few days and the unfortunate uproar it has caused in the community, I want you to know that me and my family still feel the same way about you. In our eyes, you're still the same Isaac we always known. Someone who has always treated everybody with respect and therefore deserves to be treated back with utmost respect. It took a lot of courage on your part to do what you have done, the kind of courage that most people don't have. To be able to look inside you and recognize you're really, and you live your life in a way that seems normal to you. The courage not to live a lie for the rest of your life. Many people are not blessed enough to discover the true love with another person, no matter what their gender is. We are glad that you have been fortunate enough to find that kind of love with Andrew, the kind of love that makes you both truly happy. We regret not having the opportunity to participate in your wedding and wish you both mazel tov and a happy, healthy, and long life together. We look forward to meeting Andrew and would love to be able to see all of your photos and watch your videos together. The other thing that happened is that on the same wedding website, which actually then I decided, you know what the hell, let me reactivate it. So I said, if they want to watch, let them watch it. I reactivated the website, but I did change it in certain bits. And one of the features that was on there to begin with, which really I didn't have any computer know-how to set it up, was some kind of a message board. The message board was initially meant for guests to leave little mazel tov notes saying thank you very much, we wish you all the best, or thank you for the wedding. And again, this is really not a private website, so it wasn't designed that people needed to sign in or identify who they are. If they left their name, they left it. If not, it wasn't really prompting you to identify who you were. Somehow, that message board got converted into a discussion board, where additional people who I knew were going to come and visit the discussion board were able to get into the message board and leave comments. So, unbeknownst to me, people started leaving these comments. Pro, con, everything in between. And it took off. Within the span of the next 2 weeks, there were about 700 comments, and we had another, I think, 4,000 hits to the website during those 2 weeks, that people really flooded the website, and they felt that they had something to add. And once they started getting on this discussion board, the main topic was even no longer homosexuality. It was a whole bunch of other topics pertaining to the community that people felt they wanted to discuss, and they felt the safety of the anonymity of the website good enough for them to leave those comments. Those are comments that they had kept inside, and they were just waiting for it to come out. Some of them had to do with me, some of them had to do with other issues. So some of the people who left comments were not so friendly. Here's an example of one. I just want to pose this question to Isaac. If you're proud of what you did, getting married and all, why didn't you invite your friends to the wedding? Why the double life? Why the girlfriends in the past? Was it all an act going to synagogue on Shabbat? You quote the Torah, but the Torah calls your life an abomination. Do you believe in what the nature has given you in your needs and wants, or do you believe what the Torah requires of you? I envy you for your courage to go against your heritage and do what you felt, but you also lied and broke the religious laws. I want to know what the brilliant doctor, who is one of the brightest men in our community, has to say for turning his back on it. I guess we are the scariest group. Good luck. I know we won't be running into you in synagogue, but I'm sure you belong to a more tolerant synagogue elsewhere already too. Your friends were upset with you for not inviting them to a happy occasion. I know that for a fact. So I left a little reply. I really appreciate the criticism, but I'm conflicted about the tone of your comments. On the one hand, you called it an abomination. On the other hand, you're upset how come I didn't invite my friends to celebrate that abomination with me. So this happened on a Saturday and Sunday, and through the week, the discussion board was blossoming, and I just knew that the next Saturday, after everybody has been talking about this forever and ever and ever and ever, there's something that's going to be said during the sermon that it was sure is going to be the topic of the sermon, that there's no way that the sermon is going to be about some other issue. Even though that Wednesday in between was the Haiti earthquake, that we knew right off the bat 100,000 people died on the spot. And I'm sure in this congregation and many other congregations, that was the topic of the sermon. But I just knew in my synagogue, I was going to be the topic of the sermon. It was a foregone fact. I wouldn't dare showing up to listen. All I could do is wait. And I knew it was going to happen to me. And these are the thought processes that I had that Saturday morning as I was home, waiting to see what happens. Today was going to be the big date. Last Saturday was too early after my outing for the rabbi or the central board to have an official sermon or response ready for delivery. But a week later, the rabbi would surely address the event in his sermon. It would be the elephant in the room if it didn't. It was going to happen, like it or not, and I had no control in the matter. I was sure he would use some very strong words against homosexuality. I was also sure that in his language, it would basically banish me from the congregation. And I was just powerless. It almost felt like I was waiting for my death sentence. Perhaps I'm being a bit dramatic, but the horrible feeling of knowing some doom and gloom awaits you, and you can't do a damn thing to change it, is the most miserable kind of anticipation. All I could do was to sit at home, wait for the services to be over, and for some people to come home. Only then I could ask those still sympathetic to me how bad was the damage. The most frustrating aspect was that the subject of the sermon, homosexuality, was my issue, not theirs. I didn't approach them with it. I didn't discuss it with anybody there. As best as I could, I tried to shield them away from it. My life and choices did not reflect on them one bit. I took full ownership of my homosexuality, yet they are going to address it as though they own the issue, as though they know best. How could I possibly know all the long years of inner struggle I had to go through before I came to terms with myself? Did they know if I ever contemplated suicide, as many in my situation would? Did they know if I had to see a therapist or had developed a substance dependency, as so many other struggling homosexuals do? Am I in peace with myself now that I can handle whatever the rabbi throws at me? Or am I still a vulnerable individual on the brink of a breakdown? What gives them the authority to discuss an issue that is 100% mine in my absence and without my consent? Had I already not suffered enough being gay in a very religious and unaccepting community? When the rabbi woke up that day, intended to give a sermon about me, was he content with himself knowing that he was going to make life much tougher for another human being? Did he have to dehumanize me in his mind so he can give that sermon and not feel guilty? Did I really make such a quick transition from the esteemed doctor to that faggot who needs to be singled out, isolated, and shunned away from the congregation?
Can I comment? I think my thing is a little loud. I don't know if you wanted to finish your dialogue first, or you want to, just in terms of this thing, from my understanding of your community, which is the Persian community, correct?
Sure, yeah.
At this point in your coming out, you've already gotten married, you've already separated yourself from the community, pretty much.
Right.
You went to synagogue twice a year. So you chose, understandably, because your community is very controlling, not just on homosexuality, but how much are you going to give for a wedding gift? So obviously they control people's vacation times. I mean, it's a very controlling community. It's not Judaism, it's just they're a controlling community. Maybe it comes from Iran, I don't know, I'm not familiar. So my question to you is, at this point, since you came from a community that is so controlling, not just in their attitude towards homosexuality, but just virtually in everything, it's almost like Big Brother is watching you, that's what it sounds like to me. You chose to leave, which I completely understand.
Not correct.
So, and you did.
Not correct.
You didn't choose to leave.
I didn't choose to leave. I choose to reduce my contacts and have a privacy, yet have respect and contact with my community. I didn't choose to say, I no longer am part of this community. I choose to say, I do have a private life, which you don't necessarily need to be part of it because you're not going to accept it. However, I have family here, I have friends here, and if I'm coming here to worship with you, or if I'm coming here for important life events, it's still my prerogative being born into that community. That is my congregation.
Right, but you just
I didn't rescind anything.
But
the act of getting married to another man is not rescinding of my identity as an Iranian Jew. I'm still an Iranian Jew.
Well, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm
Right.
saying is that your lifestyle at that point
Right.
was separate from the community.
That's correct.
You barely went, you said you went to synagogue twice a year. So basically the synagogue was really hardly a part of your life. Was part of your active life. Twice a year is not much.
No, it was more than twice a year. No, I didn't say twice a year.
That's what I read in the book.
Yeah, it was more than that. It was for the major holidays and some life events.
Okay. So, I don't know, maybe I got the wrong impression, but at least, but your family was accepting of your homosexuality, correct? Which is obviously is the most important, I think. And so many of the people that would respond on this website, 5,000 or however many were, probably significant majority don't matter to you, right? I'm sure they
That's
don't
correct.
matter to you. They're just people in your community, our fellow Jews or fellow Americans.
That's right.
So, I mean, I relate completely to the feeling because I also had, coming from an Orthodox community, knowing how the Orthodox community felt, generally speaking, about homosexuality. So I know what most people feel, but I also know through the experience how to prioritize who I really care, what they feel, and who are going to have their feelings. So my confusion really, or what I don't understand, like when you described how you felt when they, quote, found out.
Right.
At that point, you had loving siblings. Your father, you came out to, and it was very difficult, but you came out to, and he was supportive to you, so that your integral people in your life were supportive to you. So why was I didn't understand why the community's rejection, gossip, whatever they say. I mean, look, you read the Republicans today, you can say, "Is this horrible?" Yeah, it is horrible. Does it affect me emotionally? No, it disgusts me, and it's a horrible fact that in 2012 the Republicans are able to speak like this in America, but it doesn't crush me emotionally. So I'm wondering, why did it affect you so much?
I didn't have a different religious home. Again, coming from that congregation, we all follow the ancestry, and it's a linear ancestry that is our religious home. People do not branch out. It's much different than American Judaism, where you live in Cincinnati, and if you happen to be conservative, you look up the conservative synagogues near you, and there's choice of 3, and you choose one, because that's the one that talks to you most. That's the way you choose which synagogue you're going to go worship. You show up to the synagogue, you make friends, you meet the people, you integrate yourself. If you want, you can be active. If you want, you can just go worship and go home. In my synagogue, because it has been a linear relationship all these years, people do not branch out. It's the families that continue the linear relationship as such. So even if I did reduce my contacts with the congregation, I still had contacts with the congregation. I didn't sever the contacts, neither did I rescind it, nor did I feel that for the times that I did have a religious need, for the holidays, for certain Shabbats, for attending cousins' weddings and attending cousins' bar mitzvahs and brises, I didn't feel that I had to go elsewhere. I was connected to these people because from the moment I was born till that day, I had never stepped into a different synagogue ever in my life and feeling that I belong in there, because it was my identity to belong with these people That's what Judaism was for me.
Okay.
This is a very nice and hospitable environment, for example. This wasn't my home at that point. I didn't have a different religious home that would say, this is the way I'm going to select it.
Okay.
For us, your religious home is pre-selected.
And there's only one Persian community in New York?
There, again, depends on what town you come from. Each town of origin has its own designated synagogue. And people from this town hang out with their own synagogue folk, and the people from that town hang out with their own synagogue folk.
Okay.
Right. So for us, it's not so much the religious aspect of it, but it's the communal aspect of what makes religion for us. As I told you before, it's much more important for you to, if you're not really terribly Shomer Shabbat, get in a car, drive to synagogue on Saturday morning, and spend the Saturday with the community, rather than walk and don't violate Shabbat to the synagogue down the street.
So it's really more, from what you're saying, the Iranian community is not really, they don't focus on religion, they focus on the community and the community standards and norms that everyone's expected to abide by.
The community is terribly important.
Right, I mean, so
Much
it's
more
almost more
important
important than the
than-
religion.
Right, right, right.
So
It's a
it's
much more
interesting.
community-based religion rather than individual,
Right.
pious connection to God kind of religion.
Right. And you wanted to stay connected to that mindset?
That's all I knew. From the moment I was born, these 5,000 people, these were my Jews. You
But-
are not my Jew. This is what I know as Judaism. These individual people.
Right, but that's as a child growing up, and you see your community. But as an adult, what's unclear to me, and maybe it's unclear to me because I'm not Persian, but as you grow up and you see what your community is,
Right.
what community standards are, I would think, why would you want to stay connected to a community that has these
There's
this
many
mindset?
dimensions to the community. This is not the only thing about a community. The community has a lot to offer. They protect you, they love you, they nurture you. When we come here, one of the reasons that you see that Persian Jews are a little bit more successful as first community immigrants than other people who have come from other countries is that we do network. We do feed each other. We do take care of each other. We do try to take care of most disagreements internally as much as possible rather than having to go to the bigger system. There's a lot of networking that goes on. There's a lot of hand-holding and love that goes on. It's not purely a vicious kind of a thing. It's just that we do promote the togetherness much more. And sometimes it could be suffocating.
It's very insular.
Sometimes it could be very supportive. For example, coming to a new country, it's a lot easier if you have the support of 5,000 people rather than you're trying to make it on your own.
If you're straight.
I'm talking about business. I'm talking about my father took me
Right.
here and I was a teenager.
Right.
If he was on his own, it would be a lot harder for him to acclimate
Right.
versus he had the entire support of the community behind him. And it was much easier to acclimate and make ends meet.
So there's
There's a
support
lot of good
communities
things
for
that
each other.
come.
Right.
If you're in financial trouble, they'll help you. If you can pay it back, that's okay. If not, we'll talk about it. There's a lot of love and support that comes into it. There's a lot of chesed and Jewish values that comes out of it as well. Now, because of it, perhaps they don't take kindly to deviations from the standard. Not just in homosexuality, anything.
Right.
Any topic.
Right, the whole discussion board was many topics spoken.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. As long as you stay within the lines and follow the guidelines, that's fine. Let me just finish this one paragraph, and there's only two more that I would like to read, and then we're going to open up the discussion to the crowd, if anybody has any questions about it. Let me go back to this paragraph. I was talking about the rabbi getting up in the morning and what was he doing to think himself? Or was he going to rise above it all? Was he actually going to be a role model for proper behavior despite what the rest of the committee had done to me this past week? Was he going to say more by saying less? Was he going to give a short few sentences about the obvious and well-known position of the Orthodox community on homosexuality, and then move on to something else more relevant? The world had just witnessed a huge natural disaster in Haiti. Was a rabbi going to take advantage of this low-hanging fruit given to him by God and dedicate a sermon to the human aspect of this tragedy and diffuse attention, or not? Or did he need to be as petty as everybody else in the community and talk about me? Does he really need to go on the record to make a radical statement, further isolating the more liberal elements in our community from the conservative ones? Does he not realize that, at the end of the day, he is still technically my rabbi too? Is he going to get up on the podium and fire me from being his congregant? Is he going to be a mensch, or is he going to be an unmensch? May you and your loved ones never be a subject of a public condemnation, especially one given from the podium of a weekly sermon in a house of worship. May you and your loved one never know the feeling that someone else is planning on delivering an awful predicament about you, and you are completely powerless to stop it and defend yourself. May you never know that loneliness of knowing there will not be a single soul in the crowd who would raise their hand and defend you from someone else's evil description of you. May you never know how low I felt in those hours of Saturday morning as I restlessly awaited my doom. May you never be that powerless in the face of diversity. There's one more that I would like to read for you. Many people discuss many different things in that discussion board, and some people opened up. There was a few other closeted gay people in the community who actually saw the opportunity to discuss and bring up their case in comparison and contrast to my case. So this entry was written by somebody who chose the pseudonym No Name, and this is what he wrote. Dear readers of this discussion board, this is a serious post and not some phony, faux attempt to get attention or stir conversation. I would please ask you to honor and understand my decision to remain anonymous. I don't want you to respond to my post. I just want my voice to be heard. I have nothing but respect for the community, for the way we celebrate our traditions and maintain our commitment to Judaism and to the values of our family. It's really true. I sometimes think of us as one big family. I have always known that I was gay. Ever since I was a young kid, I knew I felt no attraction to the opposite sex. At times, I didn't understand why I was the way I was, and how could I be different, and had no one to turn to. No one in my family, nor anyone in the community, least of all our so-called community leaders. I was often distraught and wished I wasn't gay. I became scared of social environments, scared of even opening my mouth because other kids would accuse me of being like a girl and mocking me. At other times, I became angry with the community, at my family, having negative feelings about people that are not healthy, that I do not wish upon anyone. Thankfully, in college, I was able to meet many like-minded people and learn to accept myself for who I am. But I'm still not totally comfortable. After all these years, every time I go to a wedding or come to synagogue and hear things like, "Why aren't you married yet? Your parents are getting older and they should have a reason to be proud of you." In fact, I want to die. I go home and I think of the worst things. It makes me not want to come anymore. It makes me want to close doors to my room and never see people anymore. But how can I not come to synagogue and sit next to my father, pray for Israel, pray for my family's well-being, and have him bless me? How can I not come to synagogue and express my respects to the deceased and their families? Will I not be able to say Kaddish when one day, God forbid, my loved ones die? I know the answer in my heart, and I think that many of you on this side know the answer too. If this means I have to find another synagogue, then so be it. Nothing can change the love and respect I have for my father, my mother, my siblings, and my children. Nothing can change the relationship I have with God, and nothing can change me just as much as I can change a heterosexual, much as some members in the community like to believe that we are out to convert the world. For the record, we're not. I know what the Torah says, and I do not expect to ever marry at our synagogue, nor do I want to. Nor would I necessarily ever want to marry should I find the right partner, but as a human, I should be allowed to have that right. Others should not be making that decision for me. And just an unending note, please think twice before you use profanity or words of hatred on this site. We are respectful people. This is a big challenge, but I know we can overcome it. My sincere hope is that tomorrow we won't have to go through the pain and anguish I did growing up, and I can be free to pursue those happiness. And now we can have a discussion. Thank you.
The book is available for purchase here, and I think we'll sign Is this up? Yeah, thank you. So all of us can take the story home with us and read it in more detail, and I hope that I'll do that. David Silverstein has been a friend of many of us for many years in Los Angeles. He's an anesthesiologist here in the LA community, and came into notoriety. What year was it that the movie came out?
I think it was 2000.
2000, really. It was that long ago.
12 years ago.
In the year 2000, when Simchat Dubowski's film documentary "Trembling Before G-d" was first released, and many of us were surprised actually to see David in this film.
As was I.
Yes. So that was a documentary. How many of you have seen it? I hope that all of you will at some point see it. It is available on DVD. It was really the first film that explored LGBT Orthodox Jews and their relationships to Judaism and to their families, and told the stories of a number of Orthodox Jews, and David was among them. And I'm going to let you tell your story a little bit here, but I wanted to say that in the powerful way that your story is told in that film really came to light for a number of us again a year or two ago, when a group of Orthodox Israeli Jews came to Los Angeles to visit with the group of Wider Bridge. I spoke about them on Friday night. And one of the young men who has a powerful story of his own to tell about Orthodoxy and growing up in Israel and his family saw David walk into the room, and I got to witness this and burst into tears because having seen the film changed his life and changed what he was able to do with his own family. So just the ways that sharing our stories can affect one another and really bring to light things that need to be brought to light can really change one's own life and the lives of others around us. It was a powerful thing to see. And then meeting David for him was just this powerful moment in his life. And you could see it happening right in front of our eyes. It was wonderful. So David, perhaps you'll just share your story a little bit and compare notes on the ones that Isaac's told us.
Thanks, Rabbi. First, I want to acknowledge and commend you for opening the Pandora's box in the Persian community, and it's huge, because I don't know, obviously, the depths that you know from being Persian yourself, but I know historically, having friends that are Persian, how the homophobia in the community, where I've heard so many gay men who are in couples who it's not even an option that they would even remotely consider coming out to their parents. It's so, and these are not Jews, these are not religious people, it's just Persians. So it's huge. So I know the homophobia as a little bit. So it's, this could be the beginning of something huge in your community. And I hope change happens slowly. And hopefully, time will be our friend, and I think it will be, because in the untruth reigns, right? So, remind me, Rabbi, what would you like me to talk about?
Well, just I think the story that you told in the film.
Okay, so basically, I I'm from the Midwest, and I grew up in an Orthodox family. My father was a cantor, and I grew up Orthodox. I went to Jewish day schools through 12th grade. Then I went to a place called a yeshiva, which is or yeshiva, as they say in Israel, Orthodox Jewish institution. And so up until the age of 19, I really had no friends that weren't Orthodox Jews. It was very fiddler on the roof upbringing in Chicago. So my life was completely that. I knew nothing but. The only gay person I knew was my mom's effeminate beautician, who wore stereotypically tight leather clothes and spoke in a certain way, and I remember feeling repulsed by him because you mentioned role models. He wasn't a role model, to me, that's gay. That's what gay was. And though I knew on an intellectual level that I was physically attracted to men, I was dating girls, and I thought, well, I'm not gay because I'm not Jimmy. That was his name, Jimmy. I remember his name, Jimmy. And I remember actually really feeling in my body just revulsion being even around him. I was repulsed by him. I was very homophobic. And it's pretty bad if you're homophobic, if you're gay, right? So I first got wind, or actually the light bulb went off when my first experience in American University, University of Illinois. I used to go to the Jewish student organization called the Hillel, which they have, I think, throughout the country. And next to the Hillel student organization was the gay student organization. And I used to go to the Hillel all the time, and I remember thinking, God, aren't they embarrassed to walk into the gay student organization in broad daylight? I thought these things. That's how I was so, I mean, you probably could I'm sure psychologists could analyze me and say that, oh, you are this, or you are that. You're page 272. You are so in denial. But I think it's more than denial. I was just so ignorant. If you would have told me in yeshiva, you're a closet gay man, I wouldn't have even blushed. I would say, what are you talking about? I'm not Jimmy. And then when I saw this cute guy walk into the gay student organization, I thought, why is he walking in there? He looks normal. And then I thought, so you can be normal and gay. And that's what I am. So some of you may have been to Israel years ago. They used to have a thing called an asimon, where you put into the phone, and it drops every few minutes. So in America, the light bulb went off. In Israel, the asimon fell down, and the connection was made, and I realized what I was. And it was pretty intense. And I didn't know my whole life until then. And so then I was on a mission. I was driven. I was pre-med, so that was enough to be driven, but I was committed. I was determined that this was not going to be my life, because this is not me. I was raised to be married and have family, and everyone I knew was married with families, and my parents, friends, and it just didn't exist. It was not a possibility, and God forbid anybody should know, especially my parents. And so I remember thinking, well, what do I do? And I thought, well, the Torah says, I always thought the Torah said that it was a prohibition, so I thought, well, I firmly believed in the Torah, so I just logically thought, well, a rabbi should have the answer to the question, because I obviously didn't do this. This is not self-inflicted, for lack of a better word. So I tested a rabbi that I used to go to a class with my father. And I just said to him, I didn't say the truth, I just wanted to test to see his reaction to adversity. So I said, Rabbi, I have a friend who is beginning to not observe Shabbos. What would your advice be? And then he just turned in Linda Blair, the exorcist. And I said, okay, well, I'm not going to ask him the next question. And so then I thought, okay, I need to find an Orthodox rabbi. So I remember hearing about Chabad. And Chabad is an Orthodox or Hasidic sect of Jews. They wear the black hats and the black coats. And I remember growing up and knowing that they were just more accepting than other Orthodox groups or even than any other Hasidic sects. So I thought, well, okay, I should ask a Chabad rabbi because they're Orthodox. I only wanted an Orthodox perspective. And I thought, well, so I thought, okay, well, San Francisco is the gay capital of America. So I flew under the premise of a trip to California. I flew with a friend from Yeshiva, who was also going me on this trip, to Chabad of Berkeley, which is even more intense than San Francisco. It's San Francisco squared in terms of on the fringe. So I figure if anyone's going to have the answer, a rabbi in Berkeley. If he doesn't have it, no one's going to have the answer. So I figured that was my plan, my mission. So I flew there with this plan. He's actually in the documentary, the rabbi. And he was really, a lot of Chabad rabbis, I don't know if you're familiar, maybe, I'm sure many of you are, that they're quite often very warm and receiving and welcoming, and they have this Hamish, warm quality. And I remember reading a story about him in this thing called the Chabad Journal, where it was Hanukkah time. That was their Christmas vacation, Hanukkah vacation. And there was some menorah lighting in some square in San Francisco. And this story was written where there was a man beginning to cause a ruckus. And the rabbi went up to this man, and he put his arm around him, and he embraced him physically and also emotionally, and he turned the potentially uncomfortable situation into a loving one. And so when I read that story, I said, this is the rabbi I'm telling. So, it's weird to be emotional about something that happened 20 years ago, but like Rabbi, these are primal feelings. So, his name is Rabbi Langer, and Rabbi Yosef Langer, and a really wonderful man, and he's in the documentary. And so I remember I approached him on Saturday night, and my friend said, what are you asking the rabbi about? I said, I just wanted to ask him some questions about Shabbos and being in the hospital on Shabbos. You become a professional liar being gay when you're in the closet, or you think you're a professional liar. I think a lot of people know they were gay more before we tell them. We shock them when they already knew years ago, but they really know already. So we all think we're such great actors, but we're not. So I told myself, it was my line. Everything was medicine and halacha, and I had that line down. And the rabbi actually agreed to me. I told him, I remember I had $500 in my pocket that I'd raised I used to give piano lessons. So I raised all this money for my vacation. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to give you, here's $500, just fix me. And he basically just said, he was embracing, he wasn't fire and brimstone, he wasn't Linda Blair, he wasn't yelling at me. He just looked at me lovingly and gave me the wrong advice. He said, well, there are therapists that can help you change. And so he told me to write a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And so I did those things. I called this therapist, who is an expert in changing homosexuals. I'll give you the numbers after the conference, by the way. And I think he's in jail. I'm just kidding. And so that was the thing. And so I spent probably, I was 31. I spent probably 11 years trying to change. I did everything I possibly could. So I have my MD and my PhD in trying to change. That's what I thought. And so I tried. And so when this documentary, what happened was, so finally, somebody once told me years ago, David, you cannot change anything in yourself until you accept it. I never understood what that meant, really. I never really got psychology. And And so then I thought of my friend. I said, you know what, maybe I need to accept being gay. So I remember being in a coffee shop with a friend, and I said, maybe I'm going to just try to accept it first, and then I'll pursue change. Then I'll continue to pursue changing. And then when I just said those words, I began to sweat and have palpitations, and that was how I began to accept myself at the age of 31, beginning the road to acceptance. And that's why, I mean, I relate so much to the story and to the pain and the passion and the anger and so many feelings wanting to be part of a community that you grew up with, and it's just not fair. It's just not fair. And I remained Orthodox, and I just wasn't sure how to do it, how to reconcile the two. And it just was a fluke a number of years later I think it was 3 years later, that I saw at the Gay Film Festival they call it a short, where prior to the actual screening, they show a work in progress, a film that was being made. And so that's where Sandy Dabowski was there, and he showed 5 minutes of Trembling Before God, and my mouth was open. Oh my God. And so I definitely was not, I mean, I was already open to my family, like you were, and the most important thing, at least for me at that time, was having their embrace and love, much more than 100 million friends, or acquaintances, or people that want to gossip. So to me, the family was the most important, but I felt I really wanted to do something about this thing, and the way I think you're doing a similar thing in your community. I mean, we're both Jewish, but it just seems different kinds of Jews affecting different
dynamics.
Right, and I know the Persian community is very insular, and there's so many Persian Jews that you could affect so many lives positively. This is probably the beginning of an amazing thing for you. So I wish you all the best, and you can affect a lot of lives. And your rabbi, actually, just as sort of an aside, I wouldn't have expected him to say anything else but what he did. I mean, he's not going to, oh, mazel tov to the new couple. I mean, of course not. But maybe in time. So in any event, getting back to the film, so I saw this short, and I went up to Sandy Dabowski, and I said, I should be in your film. And I don't know, I think I was possessed that I said that, because I was not that open, even though I was out. It's easy being out in the confines of this room, but not being out in the confines of the world. And we think we're so concerned what people think, and people don't really think that much about us, but I think we're more concerned what people think about us than people actually do think about us. But nonetheless, we do. We're human. So I felt I should do that. And so that's how it began. It was a 5-year process. I had no idea filmmaking took that long. But it was amazing. I mean, Sandy gave me a gift. I mean, he saved me thousands in therapy, I always tell them, because there's nothing more therapeutic than speaking publicly. Nothing, even to a crowd that's adverse. I remember speaking, we went around the world. We were in South America. Claudia, my partner, is here from Argentina. Argentina, we're gay marriage. Argentina is a Catholic, not a gay country. It's a Catholic country, but they have gay marriage, and they accept it there. What's the matter with America? What's the matter with us? And if we got married in Argentina, we could go move to Israel and be accepted as a couple there. So what is going on in this country? It doesn't make... So, in any event, so the movie was just amazing. I met so many people, so many Orthodox rabbis. There's many, many Orthodox rabbis, if not most, that will say what your rabbi probably said. And to me, people always say, well, why don't you just go to a Reform synagogue? You'll get accepted. But that wasn't my point. My point was that those people already accept me. I want to address the community where the issue is. I'm going to speak to the Persian rabbi, and I want to talk to him, because that's what change is about. And so I spoke to so many rabbis, and so many rabbis said really not great things, but some rabbis said amazing things. Some Orthodox rabbis. One rabbi from Chicago, Rabbi Asher Lopatin, who is, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he is a brilliant Phi Beta Kappa, warm, loving. He went to the screening in Jerusalem, where the film screened at this huge theater, not huge, maybe 500 people, if that's huge, For Israel, it's pretty huge, and especially Jerusalem. And the crowd was full of everybody, Hasidim, Orthodox, non-Orthodox, people sitting in the aisles, students, and it was an amazing forum. And I felt embraced. And I thought, if they embrace me in Jerusalem, I don't care about the rest of the world, because this is the core of who I am as a Jew. And Claudia and I just got back from Israel. We were there for Passover, which Claudia was Catholic, and so we got to observe Easter and Passover simultaneously. So we go to Shul on Shabbos morning, then we go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre before Shabbos lunch, then we go to the Kotel, and then we have Shabbos lunch. So is that a great day? It's a great day. It's a very great day. And when I see the passion in his eyes observing his religion, it moves me tremendously. And we daven at the Kotel. It's very powerful. To me, I always say I'm going to God's office, because that's what it's to me. And so the movie enabled me a personal catharsis, and also enabled for a lot of people to relate, like you said, that man, and many people related. So I feel very proud that I did something, because I felt I wanted to do something, because there was so much pain, and not only in myself, and not only in you, but in so many people, and so every one of us. So I was given a gift, really. I don't know, it just came out of nowhere, and I was given this gift of being able to be a part of this amazing project through Sandy DeBosque. So I'll be forever grateful for him for giving me that, and I think it's, we're all work in progress, and times are changing. And look, it's 2012, like I said, the Republicans feel that they have the right to say what they say. And it just shocks me. But in 2012, they're saying these things. And these aren't Orthodox Jews. These aren't Persian Jews. These are, I don't know what they are. But they're Americans saying these horrific things. And it's going on today. So we're all struggling, right? So thank you.
So what questions would you have for our friends?
So, especially in the Persian community, but it would apply, I think, for both. If you think about the topic of like relative averot, like relative sin, so to speak, how does being gay compare to other things like intermarriage, or a woman having a child without being married, or there are a number of different things that are not acceptable. Just wondering how bad does homosexuality rank compared to all these other kinds of things you might imagine?
Right. So there is some kind of a constitution of my specific community that we're supposedly supposed to observe, and it's the role of, I guess, the central board and the rabbi to enforce it in such levels. As I said, there was no precedent of a gay person, so there was nothing written about it at that point. The precedent that was there was about intermarriage. And my specific community does not accept converts no matter what their circumstances. Doesn't make a difference if you had an epiphany at some point, or you met someone and because of that person you want to convert. And doesn't make a difference if you went through the most orthodox possible black hat conversion process whatsoever. It is not accepted. You are not going to be a part of the community. And it's written in the Constitution as such. So that was the one big taboo. And anybody who does that is excommunicated. Anybody who intermarries, is excommunicated. And I think what happened is when...
Jews, but not Persian Jews?
Well, my community, my 5,000 people. If anybody within my 5,000 people goes and intermarries, even if that other person goes through the most rigorous conversion process whatsoever, not only the other person is never going to be accepted, but you are also going to be cut off from the community. And that was an edict that went out actually probably a few years before my incident. And there was a whole big to-do, and we cannot dilute the community. This is what we have to do to preserve the community. This is our rules. If you don't like it, fine. So when it came to my situation, there was no precedent. There's no gay people in my community, obviously. We don't have gays. But I think they more or less tried to mimic that same ideology to say, well, this is a big taboo as well, and we're just going to mimic that since then. So that's the same edict that they applied to me.
Dr. Namdar, it's working? I'd like to ask you,
Sure.
what did the rabbi actually then talk about? I don't think you quite got to that, but could you
Right.
share with us what happened on Shabbat morning?
Well, obviously I wasn't there. So I got bits and pieces from various different people. And I guess everybody either had their own twist on it or their own take on it or their own level of trying to either, and again, these are the people who are sympathetic to me, who are reporting to me. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of people who were not sympathetic to me and they don't talk to me and they don't report to me what really was said. So I'm getting it secondhand and thirdhand from people who are still friendly-ish with me. And maybe they, at some point, didn't want to hurt my feelings as badly, saying how bad was it, or maybe it wasn't so bad. But there were two themes being discussed. One was the theory of I think, habituation, which means that, you know, if we open up to these people and we let them among us and we accept them as part of the community, this is the sleeper idea that, you know, the more you get exposed to it, the more you learn to accept it as equal and as not frightening or non-threatening, and therefore what we need to do is from the get-go avoid exposure. And part of the avoiding of the exposure is to eliminate these people from our ranks so we don't get used to them. We don't get to accept them eventually. And I guess that's part of how you protect yourself so that you don't learn that, you know what, he's just another guy. He's just an innocent person. He just minds his own business. He goes to work in the morning and he saves a couple of lives and he comes back home and he's just like anybody else of us. You know, there's not a big deal. So that was one theme. And the other theme was that, you know, we are a very law-abiding, thorough-abiding community, and within our ranks is not accepted. And if these people want to go elsewhere, there are tons of other synagogues for them open to, and they can go elsewhere. And unfortunately, they actually did name other synagogues down the block from them who happen to be either conservative or reform, and they kind of sort of brushed me off to say, that's where you should go. And I think it's very tactless that in a discussion that wasn't really about these other two synagogues in the neighborhood, they brought into the discussion as demeaning to them that, oh, well, you know, it's good for them to have gays. I don't think that was really appropriate for them to be brought into it altogether. Those are the two main things that were discussed, according to what I can gather.
So, just as a follow-up to that, so that he was in the synagogue on Shabbos and stood up and said that, made that announcement, and presumably, so was he the only person who made the decision, I guess? And then I wanted to know if how much of your family was actually there
Right.
on that day, and then how that all reverberated in your
Right.
family.
Okay. My immediate family, actually, at that point, my very immediate family, everybody lives in Israel. So back home in the New York area, the people I have left are cousins and aunts and second cousins and the extended families. And then you get a greater family because everybody is related to each other through somehow or another. It's only 5,000 people intermarrying all the time. There's so many different ways to link each other. The decision, from what I gather, was made before the sermon during a meeting of the Central Board. I don't think they really had an emergency meeting regarding the issue, but there was some kind of a meeting in the interim, and they decided that they're going to follow the same model as excommunicating for intermarriage. And therefore, it was the task of the rabbi during the sermon to carry that message on Saturday morning.
So your cousins and so forth who were not there either, or they were there?
They were there, but
Okay.
they don't have the podium.
No, I didn't expect them to do anything. I didn't realize that your immediate family
Right.
wasn't there. But
Right.
so I just was imagining your parents and
Right.
siblings sitting
No,
there and having.
my immediate family was not there at the moment. And I think that's also one of the themes that they really jumped on the wagon and tried to make a case out of it, is that his family doesn't live here, and his family also we're not one of the rich people in the community where we donate thousands and thousands of dollars to the congregation, and therefore being a different social standing with the community did allow them to do what they wanted to do.
Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, my question is kind of similar to her question. Did you come out to your parents before you got married? And what was the reaction of your parents, you know, when the whole community found out about your wedding?
Right. So my mother actually passed away a long time ago. My father was alive at the time. He knew about me. I don't think he was of the generation or the mindset to be completely on board with it. So I shared some things with him. He had met Andrew quite a few times. But I didn't go through the entire detail with him. I did discuss it with my sisters and my nieces and nephews. And, you know, they wish I was more mainstream or wish I had an easier life, that I didn't have this issue to contend with. But besides that, they were happy that I had found love and happiness and was able to progress. Even then, discussions with them when I was planning my wedding is that not to publicize it and invite the broader spectrum of cousins and the greater community. The consensus was to keep it just to my sisters, nieces, and nephews, and that's about it.
I guess my question is exactly referring to what you just said last, and it's also referring to what David mentioned during his first speech, and it's about you were with Andrew at that point already, you were married, you had that support from your family, and still, did you really think that those things, that they can remain secret and that you can keep those things secret? Because I would think that those things come out at some point, especially if some people knew, and it was almost like, you know, sitting on this bomb and it finally went off. So
right. I'm a much smarter man now than I used to be. I have learned a lot in the past couple of years. If I had to do things proactively, yes, I would do things differently. But you know, you go through life, you learn from your mistakes.
You would have done it differently?
Listen, if I had the courage back when I was 20 years old, compared to the courage that I have right now sitting in this medium discussing it openly, it would be different. But I didn't have the courage or the wisdom.
Of course,
I grew into it.
Hindsight's 20/20, and
exactly.
we do the best we can in every stage of life. My question is, now, okay, like you said, you post these wedding pictures. It's, if you really want to be closeted, you don't post any pictures.
Right.
But, so there had to be some possibility in one part of your brain that this was going to happen.
Right.
And now at this stage, this part of the story, this could be a tremendous opportunity for you to affect beautiful change for closeted gays in the Persian community. So if you were to do
there's also a difference between something happening as a bomb behind your back versus something happening organically as you open up to individual people and you share with them, you bring them on board, and as I did. You know, I was not completely closeted when all these things were happening. Certain family members knew, all my friends knew, everybody in the professional business already knew. So I wasn't completely out in the closet, separate the two mediums altogether. I was just going one by one, incorporating people of support into my circle of trust.
So even though obviously the way it was done was hugely disrespectful and horrific, but if you look about it over globally, maybe it was a blessing in disguise because your community really needs an earthquake to shake it up. From what I mean, sorry, that's my feeling.
Right.
And you could say, shut up, but and so does the Orthodox.
It was a bomb.
So maybe
the bomb went off that
maybe they needed this bomb to say, hey, you got, and it's not just gay issues. It's all kinds of issues.
Right.
If I want to get $50 instead of $250 for a wedding gift, you know, it's none of your business. No, it's not something I bargained for. No, I was hoping to do it more
one by one, organically, with face-to-face discussions. And maybe I was taking my time getting there. Maybe I should have been more proactive about it, but it's the pace that at the time felt right to me.
Hi, I'm Richard. I loved what you read. It was very moving, and I'm definitely going to buy your book, and also David's story. And I know I have an Iranian friend here. I met in '89 when I moved here. Eventually we admitted we're gay, and his family still he hasn't told. And he's been in the scene all along. But I had one thing piqued my interest. You mentioned that your community comes and left Iran together, and is that common in other Sephardic communities to move in mass to another country?
Of course, yeah.
And also, is that a Muslim tradition as well, the Muslims that are in this country, Persian or otherwise, to be this way?
I mean, to a certain extent, when you have immigration, it's more natural for people from that country of origin to congregate socially, culturally, and support each other. You know, for example, here in California, we have a lot of immigrants, and you definitely have this country of origin congregation and that all over. But even so, within the Jews, because the Sephardic Jews in each individual town that we lived in throughout the history, each community was very segregated by itself. And it was very important to have all these arranged marriages between ourselves to just make sure that the progeny is taken care of and the line of heritage is going on. This way, way, way before communications and things. Each community existed on its own. And it is common for communities to, when trouble comes, everybody packs their bags and goes elsewhere. So in our individual issue was the revolution that happened, so we packed our bags and left. But for example, you have the Syrian Jews. They're very insular, they're very keep to themselves. You have the Afghani Jews. You have Jews from the Soviet Union republics. They're also very insular to themselves, and they keep their heritage, and they still, to this day, after being in either here or in Israel, they still marry within that narrow framework of the boundaries of that congregation.
But if someone marries a Jew but not Persian, that's accepted?
It's accepted, of course, but a lot of times in our communities, the way it works is not that you are marrying that individual. It's your family is marrying that family. It becomes a family issue. So there is that sense that if you happen to be marrying somebody outside of your immediate community, even if they are Jewish and 100% kosher, you're losing that part of the bonding that usually takes place within our families. Okay. Oh, you have the microphone. Go ahead, Joel. He's got a talking stick.
You'll get it next. One is just sort of a clarifying question. I just got the book today, but you wrote the community is called Masorti, which we use for the conservative movement in Israel, but is it also called Mashadi?
Right.
Okay,
No, Masorti is different. Masorti, in Israel, before the conservative movement came in, and that's more of a new thing, a lot of Sephardics call themselves Masorti, which means that we follow religion more from a tradition point of view, but not necessarily from Orthodox conservative reform that you stratify yourself from the degree of your orthodoxy or lack thereof. A lot of Sephardics call themselves Masorti, meaning that we keep the holidays and the religion and the traditions more, again, from a community standard, not necessarily from individually, I need to daven every single day. Right, so and that's a whole different question.
In the Persian Jewish community, sort of Mashadi or Masorti is it's much more sort of strict and restricted community. So, okay. My question is, I guess, where you now want to go with this, and do you have plans? Is it just in that your internal community, or is your interest in sort of larger, the Persian Jewish community, and what have you kind of thought about now that you have this sort of platform? What are the plans?
From the get-go, actually, I have been a little bit of a contact person for a lot of people within the community who maybe previously had no role model, and all of a sudden here I am. I'm the first role model. I never really bargained to be that person, but they just landed on me. So I have had people who contacted me who since then have been able to be more comfortable with themselves, and now we're socialized with them, with a few of them. Some of them are more open, and a couple of them have completely come out to their families, not necessarily to the larger community. Some people are way closeted. Some people I know about that I'm not supposed to tell them I know about through conversations. Some of these people are married to the opposite sex and they have children, and they fear that if it is shared or found, they're going to be expelled like I am, and they're going to lose their children. That's a very tough situation to be in. So from that perspective, I already have made some difference in the lives of some people who have been able to be more about themselves and with their families. I would like to take a little bit bigger circle, definitely within the Jewish circles, within other Sephardic communities. And listen, what's going on in this book, in my case, it's really a microcosm of what's going on in the country. We have a lot of debate about gay rights, not just the marriage part of it, but every other right possible. And while we have conservatives and liberals and people are debating about it, a lot of times you see these debates on TV and you see these debates on newspapers, and they're written by politicians and they're written by advocates and what have you, and they have to adhere to certain standard of debate protocol to be on CNN. In this book, there was no debate protocol. People just opened their mouth and their minds, and they just verbalized whatever came out. It's unregulated, and it's really what people think. And it exactly mimics what people on the left and the right of this community, of this country, are thinking. So this is really the chance to really get under the skin, one layer, and it's what are people really thinking? What is going on in this country? Because what's going on in that is a bigger dialogue that we're having at the moment.
Since this happened, I think it's been a little over 2 years, is that
That's
what
right.
you said? Have you been back to your community for either for a service or a family event or of any sort? And if so, how have you managed that or been received or anything?
Right. No, actually, I haven't gone back to that community. I have since then found my religious home in CBSD, which is a sister community of this one in New York. Rabbi Kleinbaum is fabulous. It actually started, I think about a month and a half after the event happened, and I was still in shell shock. And I didn't know what to do, and I needed somebody to discuss it with. And we had gone to CBSD a couple of times for some holidays together with Andrew, but we were not members, we were not regular attendees there either. So I called Rabbi Kleinbaum I don't know why, I just called. I felt I had to call someone. And she got on the phone and says, drop everything and come right now, which I did. First, she gave me a big hug. She listened to my story. She tried to decipher it with me, and she's been a source of support ever since that day. So that has been my religious home since that time. I have not gone back to that community of origin. I have made some contacts for people who came forward to me and expressed support. I've been to some of the homes, and they've been to our homes, but I have not gone back to the synagogue since then. Now, what's interesting is that besides the members of the community who live back in New York in that one particular suburb, we do have a larger contingency of the same congregation of people who have migrated to Israel many, many years ago, including my immediate family who happens to be living there. And I guess they're kind of sort of adhering to the broader Israeli liberal stance, and they're much more open to it. So when we go to visit, Andrew comes with me, and we've been going to some family weddings together, and we've been going to some family events together, to holidays. Even when my father passed away, Andrew came with me, and he came to the synagogue, to the same, it's the same synagogue of the same people who communicated me, this is the Israeli version, and he came, and there was no issue. Yeah, go ahead.
Sort of in touching on what you've just been saying, the past couple people,
right.
Asking, okay, I spent quite a bit of time in other Sephardic communities, Moroccan, Tunisian, right. Like that. Persian, not as much, and Mashhadi, definitely not. But there is a greater tradition of tolerance for like larger ranges of religious observance and people having their own connection in their own kind of way.
That's right.
And not everything things being in a sense, in one sense, freer, in, you know, not as institutionalized. I'm curious as to what you think in terms of the issue of homosexuality, gay people. Do you think that that spirit could eventually be applied to our situation, or and maybe not your personal, the community that you come from, which is particularly insular and has made certain particular fences around itself that that the other ones have not. Do you think in the larger sort of Sephardic community, because it's not really talked about, in let's say the Orthodox Ashkenazi, modern Orthodox like Ashkenazi community, there are, especially in the past 2 years, there have been, it's a subject which is being talked about more and more and more, and there are people who are expressing some support. What are your thoughts about the future?
Well, that's exactly why I'm here. Why I'm trying to keep the conversation going, where I'm not turning back on my heritage and my ancestry, but I'm embracing it, and I would like to include others in it. You're right, there's a big tolerance about how religious you want to be or not to be. If you want to be completely frum and Shomer Shabbat, you're part of the community. If you want to go to the beach on Shabbat instead of coming to services, that's fine too, but you're still part of the community. You belong there, that's your home, no matter how religious or not you are. If you want to keep a kosher home, that's your business. If you don't, that's your own business. So I'm hoping that by being myself and showing other people that, you know what, this is just another variety of everything else as well, there's really no reason to pinpoint this any differently than you pinpoint many other things in life, that people will be more open to it. And I think that's really the essence of excommunicating me, is that, you know what, if we really let this guy in and we do see he's just a regular person, he's not turning his back on us, he's not renouncing his religion, he's not any less religious than he used to be before this or any after it, he's just another human being, that they will actually get used to the idea of, okay, well, he's good, he's a nice man, that's all the rest. He has a Jewish soul, he is a good man, he has a good heart, that's all that matters.
So I think with that, a good ending. Thank you all for coming. The book is available. Andrew's going to be making that possible for all of us to walk away with copy or copies today. Thank you so much, Isaac Namdar.
Thank you.
David Silverstein for being with us today. Really wonderful, enlightening conversation.
I think Joel wanted to make one announcement, if it's possible.
Yes.
I will. We'll send it out onto the airwaves. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Dr. Joel Kushner, and I direct an institute on Judaism and sexual orientation. One of my students is doing her thesis on gay, Jewish, and Persian identity and how that identity is managed, and she's looking for people to speak to about it. These would be confidential interviews. It has been a struggle, as you might imagine, to find people willing to speak to her, but if you know anyone who is Persian, Jewish, LGBT, please contact me. I can give you my information and I can connect you to her. These would be, again, fully confidential emails so people could do this, speak with her, and not have their name kind of put out in public, even though it will be, she's doing this for her master's degree. So thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.